Now let's return to our top story. That race to become the next president of the United States has taken another unexpected twist. Joe Biden has tested positive for COVID. It's forced him to suspend all engagements and isolate at his home in Delaware. And that couldn't be at a worse time for the president. The noise from top Democrats and some of his closest allies to end his campaign and stand aside is deafening. The Washington Post is reporting that Barack Obama, who remains hugely influential within the party, has told allies that his former vice president needs to seriously consider his candidacy. While the top two Democrats in the US Congress, Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, are both reported to have met with him individually to express concern over his bid for the White House. And Nancy Pelosi, the former House Speaker, has also privately told him that he cannot beat Donald Trump in November's election. That is according to US media tonight. As a result, the 81-year-old president is now said to be open to considering changing his mind about running. And being stuck at home with COVID, you can imagine he will be thinking about very little else. Well, all of this comes as his opponent, Donald Trump, prepares to deliver the closing speech at the Republican National Convention. That's his first since surviving an attempt on his life. Let's talk to the panel. Leslie Vinjamuri is director of the US and Americas program at Chatham House, and former US federal prosecutor Joe Moreno are with us. Leslie, let's start with you. So the noise grows, the pressure grows, and still yet no word from Joe Biden. What do you make of the Obama intervention tonight?
Well, I think it's significant, and I think we're seeing a number of very senior people across the Democratic Party, highly influential people, speaking to President Biden, clearly leaking to the press, creating a lot of energy around this. It had gone quiet temporarily after the failed assassination attempt, but I think that the fact that Donald Trump has come back so strong, that he followed very quickly with the announcement of his vice presidential candidate, that convention is on track and not in any way stepping back from a very, MAGA Republican agenda, very boisterous, means that there's space in the Democratic Party to revisit this question without feeling like it's going to destabilize the nation, because the victim of the attack has moved on very quickly. And so now I think there's a question in the Democratic Party of how and when, as opposed to whether President Biden should decide not to run again. And remember, these are people that have tremendous loyalty and belief in the president, that feel he's had a very good term in office, that in no way underestimate the significance of his contribution over his entire career, as well as his first term. So it's a measure that is taken in good faith. There are many people, of course, that they're very much focused forward. Again, the buzz and the drama surrounding this Republican National Convention is very disturbing to many people in the Democratic Party, and the polling is not good. So at this point, I think there really is a sense of urgency and of the need to really make a firm decision and to move ahead, because it is not going to be an easy path for the Democrats if that decision is made.
Yeah, because, of course, all the while the clock is ticking to those elections in November, isn't it? And Joe, I wonder what you make of the change in language, because as yet no one has sort of directly come out and said, Joe, now is the time to go. But what we've seen, and certainly former President Obama was sort of notable in his silence up until now, that little by little the wording changes in these sorts of statements and the pressure piles on. Are we expecting we may get to a stage where, close allies of Joe Biden will actually be really blunt and say, Joe, the time is up?
Well, Ben, I mean, as a human being, I feel awful for Joe Biden. Nobody should be going through that as they get into their elder years. But as an American, I mean, this is humiliating and it's not sustainable. I mean, we are not configured to have a figurehead type presidential figure. We're just not cut out like that. And yes, as the language changes, I think it will be more and more difficult for President Biden to continue running. That being said, I think we're seeing it's quite difficult to dislodge a president who has every intent of staying in office for as long as he can. And we really don't have a credible mechanism for removing someone who does not want to be removed. I mean, there is a 25th Amendment, but no one seems to have the appetite to use that mechanism. So I think that President Obama is probably one of the few people that can impose on Joe Biden the need to step aside. I think probably Bill Clinton, certainly Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. Several of these people come out publicly. We hear murmurs that others have spoken with him privately. But I agree with Leslie. And I'm surprised because I actually thought after the assassination attempt of President Trump, this issue might die, but it hasn't. It has come back right away. And I don't think Joe Biden can really stay in this race much longer.